well, I'll do a self-introduction because I didn't have time to write up an introduction. I'm Brian Nelson. I got started in rescue ministries in 1984 when the chairman of the board of the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission was interviewing architects, and I was one at the time and still are, interviewing architects to expand the tents was his capital campaign slogan. And he interviewed, I don't know, 4 or 5 architects and chose me. I had never stepped foot in the rescue mission. I didn't know what it was or what it did, except it was winos. Well, hi. It was winos laying on the sidewalk from World War II winos because they were 3 hots and a cot. That's all the rescue mission did, and had a church service before the dinner meal and a prayer before the breakfast and lunch, and 16 beds in the dorm upstairs and the rest of the people on mats downstairs, and that's all it was. It was an engineer's hotel. It was next to the Southern Pacific Railroad, and it was where the engineers and caboosemen, in those days cabooses, slept before they took the next train back south or north. So they had bought the hotel. The rescue mission was started in 1966, and they had bought that hotel, and that was what the rescue mission was at the time. So I had no idea. So I went to Southern California and went around to, I don't know, 5 or 6 rescue missions and saw recovery programs and job training and all the things that were going on, and came back to design the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission. So as soon as they signed my contract, they said, "Do you want to be on our board?" I was like, I guess that's not a conflict of interest because you already signed. So I was on the board. So we went from 2 employees and a $120,000 budget and 16 beds. And 10 years later, we were 24 employees, $1.2 million budget, and 100 emergency overnight beds for men, 40 overnight beds for men's recovery, 40 recovery beds for women and children in Bethel House next door, which was across the parking lot at the time. So 10 years later, I was the chairman of the board, and I was very frustrated as the chairman because the executive director, it was our fault as a board because we had hired the executive director. He was a pastor, and that was his passion, and so he was not doing the administration. And so I was very frustrated. We had line item budget, and I would say, are we on budget for income? And he says, we have money in the bank, or we don't have money in the bank. That's all he could say. You know, where are we compared to last year? I don't know. So I realized that we had put him in a box that he didn't belong in. So I went home after a board meeting one night and wrote a job description for the executive director / business administrator, and put qualifications at the bottom. Got up to go to bed at 2 in the morning, printed it out, put it on my wife's desk, said, "Please proofread," and went to bed. And on the way down the hall, God said, "I want you." And I laughed. I said, "I don't have a degree in business. I don't have background in accounting. It's not me." So I get up in the morning, go out to the kitchen, and my wife, before I can say anything, she had proofread it, put some marks on the document, and she said, before I could say anything, "I think God's calling you." Exact same words that I heard the night before. So 3 days later, I was the new executive director / business administrator. I had an architectural practice. At one time, it was up to 5 people. By that time, it was down lower, 1994. And so I just walked out the office door and worked on architecture at night and was the new executive director of the rescue mission. The board said, by the way, the vice chairman of the board, I promised him when I became chairman, he was a good friend of mine, that he would not have to become the chairman of the board. So I went to him the next day and said, "This is what's happened. God's called me." And he said, "I'm not going to stand in your way. I'll become chairman." So, yes. So I walked into the rescue mission, and the board said, "We'll have you replaced in 6 weeks, max, 4 or 6 weeks." So I started, they said, "Just get started." Well, I found that just the California laws, there was several of them that we were in violation if we got audited. One of them was employee records, employee files, and you had to have a separate file for every employee, and you had to have 5 things in it, and there was a fine for each. That alone, if we had been audited, was $120,000 in fines. That's just that one item. So I started working on it, and I figured, well, I'm going to get started. So the board started searching, and it only took them a year and a half to find. So a year and a half later, now with my experience, they got a new executive director, and I walked out the door with a small box of papers, and God said to me, literally, "What are you going to do with what I just taught you?" Oh, I don't know. What? He says, "Go to the convention next year, not as a participant, but as a vendor." So remember blueprints with the ammonia smell? Well, I ran blueprints of the floor plans and elevations of the Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, sprayed adhesive onto foam core, put up a booth, and the night before I left, with my sense of humor, God said, here's your new title, you're the homeless architect. So that's been my moniker since 1994. So that was 107 or 110 rescue mission projects ago. So I have traveled all over the nation. So how does that lead up to Maui? So I've met a lot of people through rescue ministries and at the conventions, and so God's laid on my heart to remodel pastors' homes. And I want to do it in Hawaii, because I love Hawaii, and I'll do it any place else. So I've done it in Vail, Colorado, in California, in Hawaii twice. So I wanted to do another project. So I toured around, my wife and I toured around 3 islands. And we ended up on Maui, where our pastor from Santa Barbara had just retired. And so we went out to lunch with them, and we were talking, and I said, you know, God's called me to remodel pastors' homes. Just did the one on Molokai, the neighboring island to Maui. And I want to do it for a pastor here. And he says, I don't know any pastors that need it, but we need a remodel on our church. Okay. So I took 6 guys with me. We went back to Maui, and we were staying in a guest house, in 2 guest houses next to each other. And our hostess, when she found out what I do, and when she found out what John Savage, who has Savage Group, which is a fundraiser for rescue missions, he was on that trip with me. And when she found out that, she said, we have the highest per capita homeless in America in a county, for the county. I said, you got to be kidding. I didn't see many homeless. She said, yeah, they're on the beaches and they're in the bushes. They don't go in the tourist area except when they need something, and then they go back out. So she set up 3 appointments that day, the day before we left. It was for the head of the housing authority, a person who owned all the land behind Lahaina, the west end of the island, who wanted to do a homeless encampment, and then a donor, potential donor. So the day before we left, we went, met those 3 people, went to the head of the housing authority, and if she could have crossed her arms when we walked in, you know, she was just not going to take anything else on. And so we were talking about what our vision was for trying to help the homeless. And about halfway through the conversation, I said, by the way, we're going to be a 501c3 nonprofit. We take no government money. She couldn't help us enough. She thought we were coming to ask her for something, you know, for funds and that type of thing. So then we met with the landowner, and he had ulterior motives. He wanted to do a homeless encampment that could become low-income housing, that could become marketplace housing. We didn't want to be involved in that. And then we don't remember who the donor was, the potential donor. It must have been insignificant, I don't know. Maybe significant, maybe he's one of our big donors now, but neither John nor I can remember who it was. So we left the next day. And 2 weeks later, John calls me and he says, do you feel a calling? I said, yeah. He said, we need to go back. We went back 30 times in the first 3 years at our expense. And we interviewed the homeless. We went out, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we interviewed the homeless. We interviewed every agency that we could find, and every agency told us about another agency. And so we would go for 5 days, 6 days, and put 500 miles on a car on Maui. I mean, just all over the island. Sometimes we went to the middle of the island, back to this end, back to the middle, and back to this end. You know, it was just 500 miles a trip. So we actually stopped 3 months in and said, okay, what have we learned? And we put a white flip chart up, and we started writing down everything that we knew, and we pasted on the wall, everything new. So we sat back. We had 3 people that were helping us at the time, 3 volunteers, and we said, what's missing? Outreach. Nobody's doing outreach. Everybody's sitting in their building saying, come to us. Well, as you know, the homeless don't want to leave their stuff. On Maui, it's a 45-minute drive by bus from the west end into where all the services are. So it was like, okay, so let's do outreach. Well, what does that look like? So I'm going to get more into that. So we'll talk about that as we go down the list. So the first thing is Maui Rescue Mission story. So that's the start of the Rescue Mission story. River of Life. River of Life is the Rescue Mission in Honolulu. I have been working with them for over 20 years, and all they were doing was feeding the homeless 3 meals a day, like Santa Barbara Rescue Mission, but they weren't housing anybody. They were just doing 3 meals a day with a church service and a prayer, and in Chinatown, in the old part of Honolulu, and all the neighbors hated them because the homeless hung out all day. They were coming for breakfast, coming for lunch, coming for dinner, and they were doing referrals and things like that, but they weren't really doing what we typically would call a rescue mission. So, they got a new director. I was working with them. The city wanted to give them a building and say, this is going to be the new rescue mission. You can have the building for $1. And the board said, no, we don't want to do that because of the location and other things. And finally, 4 directors later, a new director came on board 4 years ago, and he was ready to start something new. So he started looking at rescue missions, and he looked at Maui. So we are the only 2 rescue missions on the whole state. And so started looking at Maui, and he liked what we did, the outreach. And so he said, you know, I'm going to copy that. So he copied the idea, but he started saying, you know, what if we have a church sponsor an outreach at their church where all the volunteers could come? And so they started growing really fast. Because they were feeding the 3 meals a day, they now have a fleet of vans that actually they leave at the church. Somebody from the church drives in, picks up the food, takes it back out to where they are. So that's what they're doing, and we'll talk more about how that's grown in a little bit. So they no longer feed downtown. Unfortunately, the newscasters came with their televisions, cameras, and they announced on the news the River of Life is closing. They're not going to be doing meals anymore. Guess what happened to the donations? And what they didn't say is that they're expanding, but that word didn't get out for a while. So the story behind Maui, back to that for a moment, we finally said, what can we do to attract the homeless so that we can sit and talk to them? So he said, well, what if we had a shower trailer? Well, there's showers all over Maui. They're on every beach. But it's cold water. You're standing in front of everybody, especially women and children, and standing in front of everybody and taking a shower. And they just hated that, the women especially. So we said, well, we could do that, but then we can't talk to them. So what if we had washers and dryers in a trailer? Well, it's $9 a load to do laundry over there. So people, they weren't doing laundry. They were getting clothes, wearing them, throwing them away, getting more clothes, wearing them, throwing them away. So we created a trailer. This is a model of the trailer. And it has a shower, sink, and toilet in the front compartment and 2 washers and dryers in the back compartment. But washers and dryers are the key to our ministry because, hey, your stuff's in the laundry. Sit down, let's talk. We have an hour to talk to him, an hour and a half to talk to him. So that's where we started. Our first place that we went after talking to the warden at the prison was a place called Second Prison, which is a beach park down by the airport where all the prisoners went that had burned all their bridges. And so they would go down there and camp on the beach. So that's the first place we went with our trailer. And we got the Salvation Army to come and do lunch. So it was a meal, shower, laundry. We were serving about 18 people a day. And one day, a woman came up from the beach, and she said, I really want help. I'm ready for it. Can you help me get into a recovery program and get into other things? And our outreach coordinator said, yes, would you please fill out this form? Just put any information you can on this. She says, I can't. Why not? I can't see. My glasses were lost a long time ago. I don't, I can't. Abel said, come back next week. So she came back the next week, and he got the people that do free eyeglasses and eye exams, and they were there. And she got glasses, and she was so ecstatic because she could see for the first time in I don't know how long. She went back to the beach, told all of her friends about it. 11 people came up and got glasses that day. Oh, hey, maybe we ought to ask other people, other organizations to come out with us. So that was the start of our expanding ministry. So now we set up our trailer. We have 4 locations, in 3 different parts of the island. And there's pop-ups all around us. They set up like a courtyard. It's like a street fair. Then lunch is served down the middle. And we started in Lahaina with, when we just had our trailer, we get maybe 12 to 15 people. We now have 100 people coming 2 times a week. So because of all the other agencies, and that's what we're going to talk about. All right, I'm getting stories going. I'm not watching my. So so what do we do with people that want recovery? There are no recovery programs on. There's one recovery program in the entire state, and it's on Kauai, and it's $1,500 to $3,000 a month. And so it's not a ministry. It's a ministry, but it's a for-profit ministry, even though it's nonprofit. But you have to pay to go there. So there's no recovery programs. Why? Because in Hawaii you can camp 365 days a year. You don't need to come in because you don't get as cold as snow, and you don't get as hot as Tucson and all that. So they literally can camp 365 days a year. So why would I want to go in? And that was what we discovered when we did our analysis. And so what do we do when somebody wants recovery? Well, after vetting them very carefully, getting them all their benefits, make sure they have their ID, their SNAP, the medical benefits, all that, with them, we contact their family back on the mainland, right? In Hawaii, they call the United States the mainland. In Alaska, they call them the lower 49. So we contact with them, their family, or whoever back on the mainland, and we say, together we say, hey, so-and-so wants a recovery program. They're ready for it. We vetted them very carefully. We made sure they don't have any warrants for their arrest or anything like that. We've gone through all of the things, and they're ready for recovery, and we're ready to send them to you if you will accept them. And if the family says yes, or the friends say yes, then we will give them a one-way ticket back to the mainland. 75% of the homeless on Maui are from the mainland. They went over there, had a job, lost their job, got drunk that night, lost their ID, spiraled down, spiraled down, spiraled down. So we're giving them a one-way ticket back to the mainland. A lot of them, I can't tell you how many, but a lot of them came from the mainland, sent there by a jurisdiction. They've been through the jail and the hospital and the jail and the hospital and social services, and it's costing the city a lot of money. So they say, how would you like to go to Hawaii? And they go, I'd love to. And they say, all right, take a shower, get cleaned up, shave. We'll give you a suitcase with some clothes in it, give you $20, put you on a plane for $300 to Maui or to Honolulu. They arrive. So we were working with the, excuse me, 3 o'clock in the morning is getting to me. We were working with a homeless shelter that has 72 beds. 36 of them are empty every night. They don't need to come in. It's the women and children that want to come in, but most of the homeless don't. So, where was I? Back to the mainland. So we send them back to the mainland, and we talk to the rescue mission in the area and say, will you accept them into your recovery program? We have done this and this and this and this. And they say they're ready. We believe they're ready. And so they come back here. We only do that not very often, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. But our motto on the side of our trailer, it's reaching Maui's homeless one soul at a time. So I had this trailer wrapped in California, and it's a pretty big trailer. It's 18 feet long. And so I had it wrapped with this wrap. So read it carefully. Do you see anything wrong?
It says Maui on it.
No, it says Maui. Reaching Maui's homelessness. Misspelled. So I went to pick up the trailer. The guy called me and said, the trailer's ready Friday morning. and I said, I'll run over. And I was busy, and I said, I'll come this afternoon. So he calls me at noon, and he says, the trailer's ready now. I said, you said it was ready this morning. Yeah, but we had a customer come in and look at the trailer and go, what does homelessness mean? So they had to modify the stickers on it. Anyway, so you may be asking yourself, if you have a portable ministry, it's great in Maui because you can do it every day of the year, kind of, unless there's a hurricane or really bad rains. So what are the limitations that you could have? Well, heat and cold, weather is the biggest limitation. So that's a barrier for you to think about outreach. How many of you have an outreach in your ministry now? Anybody? What do you have and what do you do?
We, through the good weather time, not the snow, but we have people we have community health workers that go out and talk to the people on the streets. We give out packages like
Hygiene kits?
Yes, hygiene kits. There you go. Thank you.
I could read your lips.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, and pray with people. That's what we do right now.
Okay. And you?
Pretty similar to what you guys are doing, yeah. And then we know where a lot of the homeless encampments are, and so when severe weather's coming up, we certainly make a point to go out to them and do the van and hot chocolate and some pastries and be like, it's about to plunge in temperature or hurricanes coming or
Right.
you know what I mean. Let's get you somewhere safe and bring people in there, but certainly looking to expand it.
All right. Well, some of those barriers can stop you, but if you think about it, you don't need to go out every week. If they know there's a big snowstorm coming and you tell them the week before, hey, we aren't going to be here next week because the weather's going to be really bad, why don't you come down to the mission? By that time, they probably know who you are and they start trusting you. That's the idea, is to get them trust and then get them into the mission itself. So what does it cost to do an outreach ministry? Well, it depends on what you're doing. Do what you do best. River of Life is providing all the meals for all their hubs. They started 2 years ago, and they now have 50 hubs. Thank you. They now have 50 hubs, churches around the island. They expanded a lot faster than we did, but they have a lot of funds too, because they've been there for over 20 years. So, you know, we're still building our donor base. So the cost is 2 employees, or 1 employee and a volunteer that's basically an employee, and then 5 volunteers. That's what it takes to run the outreach trailer with laundry and the social worker that is from the rescue mission that directs everybody to all the other vendors. So we now have 11 agencies that come out with us, not all at once. The eyeglass people come out once a month, and everybody knows they're going to be there the first Wednesdays, let's say. So, and other agencies come out just occasionally, but usually about 7 to 9 set up around us, and we have well, we're going to talk about them. Okay. So River of Life does hubs, and they're sponsored by the churches, so the church pays for all the things that need to be there for the outreach. If you drive this around your community, this trailer with the logo on it, it's like you had a thrift store with a truck, you know, that says, it's great advertising. I was talking to a couple in San Francisco during the pandemic that were going to Maui the next day, and they were there getting all their paperwork done, and they only there 6 weeks out of every year. And they asked why I was going, and I explained it to them. They said, "Oh, that's the big trailer with palm trees," and they knew exactly what it was. And they're only there 6 weeks out of the year. So,
Can I ask you a question?
yes.
How much do one of those trailers run about?
This is $42,000 with the shower, sink, and toilet, and 2 washers and dryers.
Wow. Okay.
It's $70,000 for two compartments and 3 washers and dryers.
So it's self-contained, you don't need outside water source or power?
Everything, it's self-contained, it's like an RV.
Wow.
We can hook up to local water.
Right.
We actually don't have permission, but we take the gray water from the showers and the washer and dryer, and we use organic soaps and everything, and we water all the bushes at the churches where we set up.
Wow. Okay.
The black water, we have a holding tank for black water and gray water. So,
Because I have an outreach ministry as well. It's called Keep Hope Alive Mobile Missions. Me, my wife, and her best friend, we have a ministry. And see, being in Wilmington, Delaware, we experience all 4 seasons.
right,
We have the hazy, hot, and humid in the summer. In the winter, we have the wind chill factor, so it's like
us here.
yeah, like -2 degrees. And
Right.
So, and during them times, people at Sunday breakfast and shit, we don't deny anyone when it's a bone-chilling temperature. We bring them in no matter what, because it frees us out. And even during the summertime, when it's 100 degrees at night, we bring the people in.
Right.
And that would be great to go around during the summertime. People take showers. Some people don't want to come to the mission because some people don't want to follow the rules, and so they rather just stay out and do their own thing. But they camp except in Maui, they camp outside. A lot of guys have their. Matter of fact, one person has his backpack on his back. He has a camper and a tent. He sleeps outside, but at the same time, they can come and wash their clothes, use the bathroom, take a shower, or whatever. You know? And I was curious because I've seen on your website, I tuned into it. I was wondering how much it ran for, but I didn't realize it was that inexpensive. That's not
It's
bad
not
at all.
really that bad, no, not at all.
And I'm thinking when I thought that's what $100,000. I'm like, do I have that in the budget to do it?
so with 4 employees, we can run the with 4 employees and volunteers.
Okay.
One of the things we did not realize,
Can we purchase that? Can we purchase that here in the States, or that's something you have to get in Maui?
we had it made in Indiana,
Indiana? Okay.
RV center of the world.
That makes sense. Okay.
One of the things that we did not realize until we got the trailer there, and all of a sudden we had full tanks, the gray water and the black water. There's no RVs in Maui. There are no RVs. We didn't have a dump site. And we finally found the county has a dump site because they pump all the toilets on the beaches, the porta potties. And so we finally found a place, and then they gave us a hard time, but we finally got a contractor that did it. And so, but that was something that we not anticipated when we did all our planning, a dump site. I'm sure you won't have that problem. So we have Wi-Fi for job search and agency communications.